Italy urged the European Union on Thursday to guarantee bond issuance needed to finance defense, saying a NATO spending target of at least 2% of gross domestic product, GDP, by 2028 clashed with the EU's revamped fiscal rules. A diamond-studded necklace thought to be involved in a scandal that led to the eventual downfall of the last Queen of France, Marie Antoinette, is being sold in Geneva next week. The Georgian-era piece containing 300 carats of diamonds being sold by an Asian private collector in Geneva on November 13 is valued at around 2 million Swiss francs, $2.29 million, Sotheby's said, although it may fetch much more. Hezbollah welcomes any effort to stop the war in Lebanon but does not pin its hopes for a ceasefire on a particular U.S. administration. Hezbollah lawmaker Ibrahim al-Musawi said on Thursday when asked about Donald Trump's election victory. U.S. President Joe Biden was set to address the nation on Thursday after a stinging election defeat for his Democratic Party at the hands of Republican Donald Trump, whose stunning political comeback has reverberated around the world. Thousands of people were under evacuation orders in Southern California as fast-moving wildfires engulfed homes, authorities said, with the National Weather Service issuing a red flag alert that described the situation as particularly dangerous. Britain's Prince William visited a fishing community in Cape Town on Thursday, the final day of a climate-focused trip to South Africa planned around his multi-million-dollar environmental prize. Israeli forces stepped up bombardment across the Gaza Strip on Thursday and ordered more evacuations, creating a fresh wave of displacement from northern Gaza, where Palestinians fear they will not be able to return. Center-right lawmakers in the European Parliament have made proposals to further weaken the European Union's beleaguered law to ban commodity imports linked to deforestation, a document seen by Reuters showed. In its current form, the landmark law would, from December 30, require companies importing soy, beef, cocoa, coffee, palm oil, timber, rubber, and related products to prove their supply chains did not contribute to the destruction of the world's forests or face hefty fines. Companies exporting commodities from Europe would face the same obligations. Mozambican police fired tear gas at protesters in the capital Maputo on Thursday in the biggest demonstration yet against the long-ruling Frelimo party, which was declared the winner of a disputed election last month. Volunteer veterinarians in eastern Spain's flood-hit Paiporta are treating pets that have caught infections from the devastated town's mud-filled streets at an improvised first aid station with donated medicines and equipment. Italy is preparing a plan to shield its universities and research from foreign influence, a government undersecretary said on Thursday, to prevent other nations from obtaining valuable scientific and technological knowledge. Donald Trump will face far fewer limits on his power when he is sworn in once more as U.S. president in January, with allies in place across Washington to help him achieve his goals. Trump returns to power as the head of a Republican Party that has been remade in his image over the last 8 years, and as the architect of a conservative-leaning judiciary that has helped to eliminate his legal perils. Israeli strikes on Lebanon killed 40 people around the eastern city of Baalbek in the Bekaa Valley on Wednesday, according to the country's health ministry, and at dusk more strikes hit Beirut's southern suburbs. Among the 12 non-French skippers starting the 10th edition of the Vendée Globe on Sunday, Xu Jingkun will be the first Chinese sailor to embark on the non-stop solo around-the-world race, despite losing his left arm at the age of 12. As much of Europe frets over the return of Donald Trump, Hungary's Viktor Orban is in a jubilant mood. A much-needed victory for the world. The Hungarian nationalist leader wrote on X minutes after Trump declared victory. Germany's coalition collapsed on Wednesday as Chancellor Olaf Scholz fired his finance minister and paved the way for a snap election, triggering political chaos in Europe's largest economy hours after Donald Trump won the U.S. presidential election. Donald Trump's victory in the U.S. presidential election has darkened the outlook for a strong deal at the COP29 climate summit next week, and will increase pressure on Europe and China to lead international progress in curbing planetary warming, according to climate negotiators. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan and Cyprus President Nikos Christodoulidis met on the sidelines of a summit in Hungary on Thursday, Cypriot officials said, in a rare and unusual encounter between traditional foes. Mercedes-Benz has improved wastewater and air pollution management at its only car factory in India after officials detected environment law lapses in recent inspections. Government documents show the world's biggest food and beverage companies on average sell products in low-income countries that are less healthy than what they sell in high-income countries, according to a new report. Products sold by companies including Nestlé, PepsiCo, and Unilever were assessed as part of a global index published by the Access to Nutrition Initiative, ATNI, its first since 2021. The amount of finance provided to developing countries to help them adapt to the impacts of climate change is far short of the $359 billion a year needed even after the biggest annual increase yet, a UN report on Thursday showed. Russia hit an energy facility in northern Ukraine during overnight drone strikes that injured at least 3 people across the country, Ukrainian officials said on Thursday. Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra met Myanmar's junta chief on the sidelines of a regional summit in China on Thursday, in a rare overseas trip by a general grappling with a civil war at home. The British government said on Thursday it had imposed its biggest sanctions package against Russia for 18 months, targeting people involved in the Ukraine war, African mercenary groups, and a nerve agent attack on British soil. European leaders meeting in Budapest on Thursday urged Donald Trump from afar to avoid trade wars, maintain support for Ukraine, and to refrain from unsettling the global order following his victory in the U.S. presidential election. Cuban authorities struggled to return power to the island on Thursday morning after Hurricane Rafael knocked out the country's electrical grid, leaving 10 million people in the dark. Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu said on Thursday, a day after Donald Trump became U.S. president-elect, that the West should accept Russia was winning the Ukraine war and negotiate an end to it. India is open to offering easier market access for U.S. firms if Washington reciprocates under President-elect Donald Trump, who has long called out New Delhi for its high tariffs, sources aware of the matter said. In anxious conversations across the U.S. on Wednesday, many Democrats were struggling to understand what led their neighbors to vote Republican Donald Trump back into the White House. Rudy Giuliani faces another day in court on Thursday, after 2 Georgia election workers who were defamed by the former New York City mayor said he is ignoring a court order to surrender his luxury apartment and other belongings. German opposition parties and business groups on Thursday urged Chancellor Olaf Scholz to trigger new elections quickly after his rocky 3-way coalition collapsed and plunged the country into political turmoil. Donald Trump's U.S. presidential election victory has sent shockwaves through Black American communities, which voted overwhelmingly for Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, despite a campaign by her Republican rival to court black men. Thousands of migrants traveling together in a caravan in Mexico are grappling with their next steps after former U.S. President Donald Trump, who ran on an anti-immigration platform, was propelled to victory for a second term. Japan's revered Mount Fuji finally regained an iconic snowcap on Thursday, setting a record for the slowest snowfall in 130 years, the meteorological agency said. The European Union's climate commissioner on Thursday reaffirmed EU plans to end sales of CO2-emitting cars in 2035 and tighten CO2 limits next year, after pressure from some governments and car makers to reconsider the policies. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump inherits a United States-China relationship reset by Presidents Joe Biden and Xi Jinping over the last year to lift ties off a diplomatic nadir after COVID-19 and tension over Taiwan. French Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau on Thursday criticized the unfurling of a giant Free Palestine banner at a Paris Saint-Germain PSG soccer match, saying it was unacceptable. Turkey expects Donald Trump's White House will lower tariffs on its steel and textile exports, the trade minister said on Thursday, as the lira and Turkish assets continue to rally on prospects of new U.S. trade and foreign policies. This month's UN Climate Summit, COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, has been dubbed the Climate Finance COP for its central goal: to agree on how much money should go each year to helping developing countries cope with climate-related costs. Germany's President Frank-Walter Steinmeier said on Thursday he was prepared to dissolve parliament and clear the way for new elections following the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's three-way coalition, warning all parties to act responsibly. The Israeli Defense Ministry said on Thursday it had signed an agreement to acquire 25 next-generation F-15 fighter jets from Boeing Company. It said the $5.2 billion agreement was part of a broader package of U.S. aid approved by the U.S. administration and Congress earlier this year and included an option for 25 additional aircraft. The Roman Catholic Church's highest-ranking diplomat offered congratulations to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on Thursday and wished him great wisdom as he prepares to return to the White House. The strengthening ties between Russia and North Korea are not only a threat to European security, but also for the United States, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said on Thursday. Russia is delivering the latest technology into North Korea in return for North Korean help with the war against Ukraine. And this is a threat not only to the European part of NATO, but also to the U.S., Rutte said before a meeting with European leaders in Budapest. Donald Trump reshaped the U.S. electorate once again this year, piling up support among Hispanic voters, young people, and Americans without college degrees, and winning more votes in nearly all of the country as he reclaimed the presidency. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni on Thursday congratulated Tesla CEO Elon Musk, who backed Donald Trump in his victorious campaign to return to the U.S. presidency. Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Thursday Poland would work on strengthening its relations with the United States following Donald Trump's victory in the presidential election. Tusk was speaking to reporters before leaving for an EU summit in Budapest over Thursday and Friday, at which Trump's return to power and the collapse of Germany's ruling coalition will be major talking points. Chinese imports of U.S. farm goods, which have slowed since the trade war during Donald Trump's first presidential term, could be hit again if tariff hostilities resume when he returns to office in January, experts say. China remains the biggest market for U.S. agriculture products despite a decline in imports since 2018, after Beijing slapped tariffs of up to 25% on soybeans, beef, pork, wheat, corn, and sorghum in retaliation for duties on Chinese goods imposed by Trump. Donald Trump recaptured the White House with a sweeping victory on Wednesday as tens of millions of Americans looked past his criminal charges and divisive rhetoric to embrace a leader who, if he carries out his campaign promises, will test the limits of presidential power. Trump, 78, clinched Tuesday's election after a polarizing and dizzying campaign marked by 2 attempts on his life and Kamala Harris's late entry into the race following President Joe Biden's surprise withdrawal. Palestinians locked in war with Israel for more than a year expressed fear at Donald Trump's return to the White House, while the leaders of the militant group Hamas and the Palestinian Authority urged him to act for peace. The Philippines expects U.S. policy in the Indo-Pacific and support for its treaty ally amid South China Sea tensions to remain steady under Donald Trump, driven by bipartisan resolve in Washington, its ambassador to the U.S. said on Thursday. This year is virtually certain to eclipse 2023 as the world's warmest since records began, the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service, C3S, said on Thursday. The data was released ahead of next week's UN COP29 climate summit in Azerbaijan, where countries will try to agree a huge increase in funding to tackle climate change. Donald Trump's victory in the U.S. presidential election has dampened expectations for the talks. U.S. elections are an opportunity to review the wrong approaches of the American government, Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghaei said on Thursday, according to state media, after Donald Trump won the presidency on Wednesday. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol spoke with Donald Trump on Thursday and congratulated him on winning the U.S. presidency on the Make America Great Again slogan as officials in Seoul worked to prepare for significant economic changes. Yoon and Trump held a 12-minute phone call and discussed the close security and economic ties of their two countries across all areas, a senior South Korean official said on Thursday. More U.S. financial firms may pull back from China, hive off local units to minimize risks, or pause expansion plans on concerns about geopolitical tensions in a Donald Trump presidency, industry executives and analysts said. Mainland China was a lucrative market for Wall Street investment banks and major U.S. asset managers to expand in the decade leading up to the pandemic as the world's second-largest economy recorded double-digit economic growth. China's President Xi Jinping congratulated Donald Trump on his U.S. presidential win and urged both nations to find the right way to get along, as looming U.S. tariffs threatened to return them to the days of a trade war years ago. Stable, sound, and sustainable China-U.S. relations serve the interests of both, Xi said on Thursday, adding that the international community would expect the two powers to respect each other and coexist peacefully. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba hopes to meet U.S. President-elect Donald Trump in the United States this month, 4 sources said, in an attempt to emulate then-Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's close ties during Trump's first term. Taiwan may demonstrate it takes Donald Trump's protection money demand seriously with large and early new arms deals, showing it is not looking for a free ride and is determined to show Washington its resolve to spend to defend itself. Trump, who won a second term as president this week, unnerved democratically governed Taiwan, which is claimed by China, by saying that Taiwan should pay the U.S. for its defense and that it had taken semiconductor business away from America. Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un traded insults and threats during his first presidency over Pyongyang's weapons programs, although they met 3 times and Trump once quipped, "We fell in love after exchanging letters." China and the Solomon Islands have agreed to exempt citizens of both countries from travel visa requirements, the Chinese Foreign Ministry's Consular Affairs Department said in a social media post on Thursday. Cuba's national electrical grid collapsed on Wednesday as Hurricane Rafael slammed into the island's southwest shore, packing sustained winds of 115 miles per hour, 185 kilometers per hour, and wreaking havoc on the already crisis-stricken country. Donald Trump has long touted his relationship with Kim Jong-un, but if the U.S. president-elect seeks another summit, he will find a North Korean leader emboldened by an expanded missile arsenal and a much closer relationship with Russia. After trading threats of nuclear annihilation during the first year of Trump's initial term, Kim and the then U.S. president held 3 unprecedented meetings in Singapore, Hanoi, and at the border between North and South Korea in 2018 and 2019. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk expressed in a joint statement on Thursday their concerns over the political situation in Georgia. Earlier this week, several thousand Georgian demonstrators took to the streets to protest against what they say was fraud in last month's parliamentary election, in which the ruling Georgian Dream Party, seen as increasingly pro-Russian, claimed victory. Russia plans to significantly tighten the rules governing the income received by those deemed foreign agents, and of those who speak negatively about Russia after leaving the country, the Speaker of the Russian Parliament said on Thursday. The Australian government will legislate for a ban on social media for children under 16, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said on Thursday, in what it calls a world-leading package of measures that could become law late next year. China's Premier Li Qiang expressed support for Myanmar's political reconciliation and 2025 election plans in a meeting with Myanmar junta leader Min Aung Hlaing on Wednesday, according to state media outlets. Spanish police have made a record cocaine seizure after finding 13 metric tons of the drug hidden in a shipment of bananas in a container from Ecuador in the southern port of Algeciras. The amount discovered on October 14 breaks the previous record in Spain when 9.4 tons of cocaine were found in 2023, also in Algeciras, the 4th biggest container port in Europe. Germany's ruling coalition collapsed on Wednesday as Chancellor Olaf Scholz sacked his finance minister and paved the way for a snap election, triggering political chaos in Europe's largest economy hours after Donald Trump won the U.S. presidential election. After sacking Finance Minister Christian Lindner of the Free Democrats' FDP party, Scholz is expected to head a minority government with his Social Democrats and the Greens, the second-largest party. Thailand's economy stands to gain from any U.S.-China trade war, Thai Commerce Minister Pichai Naripathaphan said on Thursday, adding the Southeast Asian country had good relations with both nations and would not need to take sides in a dispute. Indonesia's Mount Liwatobi Laki-Laki erupted 8 times on Thursday, spewing a plume of volcanic ash up to 8,000 meters, 26,250 feet, high, officials said, as the government scrambled to build homes for victims of a big eruption that killed 9. Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan held a telephone call with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump late on Wednesday and discussed improving cooperation between the two countries in his new term. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on Wednesday to congratulate Trump on his election win. New Zealand's centre-right government on Thursday introduced a bill aimed at reinterpreting the country's founding agreement, triggering protests by Indigenous Maori groups who said it would undermine their rights. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he had spoken with Donald Trump on Thursday after the Republicans' U.S. election win, as Australia's U.S. ambassador deleted comments he previously made about Trump, saying they did not reflect the view of the Australian government. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Wednesday that he spoke with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump following his election victory. Plea deals agreed with the man accused of masterminding the September 11 attacks, and 2 accomplices held at the U.S. military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, were valid according to a judge's ruling reported by the New York Times on Wednesday regarding agreements that had been revoked by the Pentagon. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris vowed to keep fighting for the ideals that powered her presidential campaign on Wednesday, in a concession speech that acknowledged President-elect Donald Trump's win while warning of potential dark times to come. Ukraine appealed to Donald Trump's image as a tough leader on Wednesday in the hope of persuading the returning U.S. president not to abandon its cause in pursuit of peace with Russia. The Biden administration is making contingency plans for a possible surge in border crossings, as potential immigrants say they are concerned that President-elect Donald Trump will shut down the border, NBC News reported on Wednesday, citing 2 unidentified U.S. officials. The officials told NBC that while the U.S. Homeland Security Department has not yet seen a surge in migration, they predicted in a meeting on Monday that immigration would increase if Trump were elected. Venezuela's government on Wednesday congratulated Donald Trump on his victory in the U.S. presidential contest, with President Nicolas Maduro later calling Trump's re-election a new start for bilateral relations. Maduro and Trump have a historically tense relationship. During his first term, Trump put in place harsher sanctions on the South American country, especially on its key oil industry. Maduro broke off relations in 2019. Deforestation in Brazil's Amazon fell 30.6% in the 12 months through July, compared to the same period a year prior, according to government data released on Wednesday. The smallest area destroyed in the world's largest rainforest in 9 years, roughly 6,288 square kilometers, 2,428 square miles, of Amazon were destroyed, an area larger than the U.S. state of Delaware, data from Brazil's space research agency INPE showed. Scientists consider the Amazon's protection vital to curbing climate change because of the vast amount of climate-warming carbon dioxide its trees absorb. The White House plans to rush billions of dollars in security assistance to Ukraine before President Joe Biden leaves office in January, sources said on Wednesday, hoping to shore up the government in Kyiv before President-elect Donald Trump's Jan. 20 inauguration. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum on Wednesday congratulated former U.S. President Donald Trump on his victory in the presidential election, asking him for dialogue and respect for sovereignty. Efforts by the United States and others to persuade more countries to contribute to a new global climate financing initiative risks undermining the Paris Agreement, Singapore's Environment Minister Grace Fu told Reuters on Wednesday. In a meeting with one of America's most powerful unions in September at its Washington headquarters, Vice President Kamala Harris said she'd protect union jobs and workers' livelihoods better than Donald Trump. But leaders of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, long staunchly allied with her Democratic Party, appeared unconvinced. When Harris argued that her Republican rival was no champion of the working class, the union bosses grilled her, questioning whether she and President Joe Biden had done enough for union workers, according to a Teamster leader who recounted the September 16 meeting to Reuters. Within days, The union publicly embarrassed Harris by declining to endorse a Democratic presidential candidate for the first time since 1996. Republican President-elect Donald Trump is considering former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe to lead the Central Intelligence Agency in his second administration. Punchbowl reported on Wednesday, citing multiple unnamed sources. Democratic U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday called to congratulate Donald Trump on his presidential election victory and invite him to meet at the White House and will address the nation on Thursday. Britain's Prince William said on Wednesday his wife Kate was doing really well and had been amazing in a year when she has undergone preventative chemotherapy for cancer. Ireland plans to hold a general election on November 29. Prime Minister Simon Harris said on Wednesday, as his center-right coalition bids to capitalize on a popular budget and a dramatic slide in support for opposition left-wing nationalists Sinn Féin. While campaigning to regain the U.S. presidency, Donald Trump said that he would be able to end Russia's war in Ukraine in 24 hours, warned that Israel would be eradicated if he lost the election, and vowed sweeping new tariffs on Chinese imports. The United Nations says replacing its Palestinian Relief Agency, UNRWA, in Gaza and the West Bank is not the world body's responsibility, signaling it was Israel's problem. Brazil's finance minister said on Wednesday the government has concluded talks on new measures to strengthen the fiscal framework, seen as crucial to improve the valuation of the country's risk assets, which have been hit by fiscal concerns and volatility linked to the U.S. election. An initial 899,000 vaccine doses have been allocated for 9 countries across Africa that have been hit hard by the current Mpox surge, the WHO and other health organizations said on Wednesday. The WHO declared Mpox a global public health emergency for the second time in 2 years in August after a new variant of the virus, called Clade Ib, spread from the Democratic Republic of Congo to neighboring countries. Donald Trump's return to the White House next year could bring economic pain and difficult decisions for Canada's Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, once branded a far-left lunatic by the Republican.